describe it as hail hitting on a tin roof.
What you're watching now is the Branch Davidian compound near Waco going up in flames.
The reason I've kept it going is because I felt that we needed to be able to tell our story from our point of view.
Today, April 19th, marks a somber day in American history. The purpose of KPRC 2 Plus Now is to focus on what's happening now at this hour. But this morning, our team wanted to dedicate the top of this show to the events that unfolded 30 years ago this morning in Waco. Today also marks 28 years since the Oklahoma City bombing. Both events are connected. To my left is a live picture of Oklahoma City, where at 8:45, we will take you there live to listen to a ceremony. We begin with a siege in Waco. More than 75 people in the compound died during the fire, including 25 children. Only 9 survived. 11 people were charged, 8 were convicted. 3 people were acquitted, including Clive Doyle. Which brings us to our guest this morning, Attorney Dan Cogdell, who represented Mr. Doyle all those years ago. Thank you so much for coming in studio to chat with us this morning. A lot to talk about. We have a few minutes to talk about those events. Walk us through where you were when this was all unfolding.
Well, during the siege, Dick DeGuerin had been retained to represent David Koresh, and he was expecting that, a bunch of people would be charged ultimately, and he asked me to go, or asked me to represent Clive Doyle. And at the time, we figured that there would be 80 people charged, and he wanted us to do it for free. And I told Dick, there's no way I could do this for a 2 or 3 year trial for free. When the fire happened 30 years ago today, my client Clive Doyle survived, and Dick asked me to go see Clive in Parkland Hospital, and I did. And after spending, a few minutes with Clive, I decided that I wasn't much of a lawyer if I didn't volunteer my time to represent him.
Yeah, I know what happened in Waco is getting a fresh new look, a lot of attention because of a new series airing on Showtime. You had the opportunity to go to that debut, that premiere last week in New York. Your takeaways from that?
Surreal. If somebody would have told me 30 years later I'd be sitting in a posh New York hotel being served champagne and finger food.
That did not happen here this morning at KPRC.
Well, I don't drink, so I didn't get the champagne anyway, but it was surreal. Yeah. Brought back a lot of good feelings, brought back a lot of bad feelings.
Yeah. What is so captivating about the events that transpired in Waco 30 years ago? I
mean, I think from my perspective, you can absolutely draw a straight line from Waco to Oklahoma City to January 6th. I think the Waco events were sort of the beginning of the great cleavage that this country is in today.
I was going to talk about that. A lot of people connecting the dots between what happened then, what happened in Oklahoma City, and then, of course, now 2 years ago. What do you want people to know about the siege in Waco?
It was completely unnecessary, completely unavoidable. The acts of the law enforcement during the siege were outrageous, and I don't think it should ever be forgotten.
How long? I know you were saying you were preparing to initially represent 80.
Well, to be clear, I probably misspoke. Dick had asked me to represent Clive Doyle when we expected there would be 80 charged, and I told him there's no way I could do that financially. But when Clive survived the fire, he said, look, the guy that I wanted you to represent actually survived. Would you,
That morning changed the whole landscape of what you were intending on possibly getting into.
Yes, to some extent, but also I had believed the hype that the government put out for 51 days that these people were outside the bell curve of normalcy and they were a bunch of freaks and they were a bunch of Koresh. When I went and met Clive, he was his religion, his commitment to his faith was as normal as Catholicism is to a Catholic.
Right.
He'd been raised a Davidian, his parents were a Davidian. That was normal to him, and he was no more a conspirator to kill federal law enforcement, you know, than I'm a male supermodel.
Right. But before you had met Clive, were you watching this unfold in Waco?
Absolutely. Sure. Everybody was.
Did your takeaway of what happened changed after meeting Clive?
It changed at 2 points. One, on the 19th, when they sent tanks into the house. I thought, you know, there's no reason to do that. And then when I met Clive and recognized the kind of person he was at his core, that certainly changed my opinion as well.
What was it like representing Clive during this this chaos? I know obviously the media was around. The way media covers events has certainly changed over the years, but some people calling it a circus back then.
I mean, I have never seen, I've been doing this for 40 years, I've never seen as much media attention, national and international, as we had during that trial. That said, my mentor, my role model, the whole reason I became a lawyer was a guy named Racehorse Haynes, who's passed, but we were around high-profile cases all the time, so trying a high-profile case in and of itself wasn't that big a deal to me. What was singular about this case was the division of folks' worldview on it. We were getting letters while we were trying the case, pro letters, hate letters. I got a letter from Tim McVeigh, as a matter of fact. The division was the remarkable thing about that case.
For people not familiar on how those two events are connected, what is the connection with Timothy McVeigh, Waco, and then of course the bombings?
Tim McVeigh, the sole reason that McVeigh chose to blow up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City was the Murrah building housed the largest contingent of law enforcement officers that were active during the Branch Davidian raid. So that was his way of paying back the government by blowing up the Murrah building. He was at the siege during Waco, so he was very much, I mean, Waco was unquestionably the catalyst for the evil that happened on April 19th.
And he did not live in Waco.
He did not.
He just went to Waco.
Correct.
To participate. I know I was reading an article and it was talking about you were in court one day and federal agents had stormed into the courtroom.
Right.
Walk us through that. That's very interesting. I was unaware of this.
Yes. So on April 19th of, well, that would have been
28 years ago.
28 years ago. I'm in trial here in federal court, and you know, just another day I'm in federal court, and a bunch of suits blow through the back door, suits meaning guys with initials after the name, law enforcement, and they didn't even say, may we approach, they went straight to the bench and whispered with the judge. The judge turned to the jury and said, you know, would you folks step back into the jury room? Mr. Cogdell, can I see you in my chambers? And I thought, well, you know, I'm late on my taxes, but this is a bit much here. And the first thing that the FBI agent asked me was, you know, when's the last time you talked to Clive Doyle? You know, it's been several months. Why? Well, we think the Oklahoma City building just blew up. We think he did that. And I'm like, there's no way he would do that. So because Clive was one of the three acquitted, but he was the only one that didn't have an immigration hold. He was the only one that literally walked out. So they naturally assumed that he had something to do with the bombing of the Oklahoma City building.
Mr. Doyle passed away last year.
He did.
Last year. Did you stay in contact with him throughout the years?
Episodically, as you might expect. Clive was a little bit of an odd duck. But for the professional relationship I had with him, I really didn't have much of a relationship, which is not unusual in my business. You know, kind of like the news business, you move on to the next story. In my business, you move on to the next client.
Of course. Did his beliefs evolve post the siege?
No, he was very much
death?
committed to the idea that David Koresh was a prophet. He was very much committed to the idea that everything was preordained. As a matter of fact, at the acquittal, we were having the celebration, and Clive kept saying to the media, I just want to thank God and David Koresh for this verdict. I just want to thank God and David Koresh for this verdict. And I was drinking in those days, and after a few scotches, I said, I appreciate his faith and his commitment, but I just called the state bar, and neither God nor David Koresh is licensed. I'd like a little credit for this verdict.
Are any of the other survivors still around today?
I mean, none of them are in Texas, to my knowledge. There was a large contingent in Hawaii. I think several are still living in Hawaii, but again, that's 30 years ago. So a lot of them have either moved on or passed on.
Are people still following Mr. Koresh today and his teachings, his preaching?
If they are, that's not to my knowledge. Now, the compound is, they have sort of an information center there in Mount Carmel, and it's been taken over by these alt-right conspiracy theorists that have nothing to do with the Koreshian beliefs, but they're hugely anti-government folks that are there now. It's amazing how it's moved even further to the right.
Yeah. What is it that you think makes Waco still relevant?
That's a good question. In my view, it is that you can never completely trust your government, period, full stop. And if you do so at your folly.
Yeah. And we're seeing that, unfold and take shape in events today.
Absolutely.
30 years later.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's a fair comparison to draw between the people of the compound to that of people who are...
I do to this extent. In today's world, where your information is siloed off so specifically, and your feed on ABC or CBS or NBC is different than my feed on the same thing, so you can find your justification for your beliefs just about anywhere. And I think that again, that Waco was sort of the beginning of this division, and unless we get back to the center and have dialogues and discussion, as opposed to using tanks or throwing Molotov cocktails, we're never going to get back to the center.
That's a great point. Great point. Mr. Cogdell, thank you so much for coming in this morning. We do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.